Welcome. There's a video I'm supposed to do by 12, but I want to do it now so that later on I'll be busy with some other things. So feel free and be set here, guys. So we'll be varying from time to time depending on how free I am to go on with our thing. So guys, how do you see about this scandal? There is a scandal. Hello. So guys, how is Kenya? There is somebody who has come up with some very funny political news. I don't know whether you trust this, whether you believe this, or it's propaganda. You know, politics is about propaganda. You throw someone to the mud or under the bus and you survive it. So let's get to hear this, because there's somebody who came out to give faces that we must avoid because they're working with William Ruto. Let's get to hear this from Kijana Msafi and see what he says. He revealed this yesterday. And I don't know whether you believe what he says, you know. We just have to listen and critically analyze this. No, let's go for it.
My wife got salmonella from toast. I never post stuff like this, but I had to share. I cook almost every day, so...
Okay, guys, so Kijana Msafi has come up to mention two people here, Babu and Sifuna. What do you think? Now, these allegations might come out as a saga, but at the same time they be truthful. We just have to look down into it. Now remember, currently a lot of people are supporting Babu Owino, and we do not know whether this guy, Kijana Msafi, is coming out to speak like this so that he soils the names of Babu Owino and Sifuna, or whether it's just something that is being done to, you know, to cloud chase, or whether it's true. What is your thought? What is your thought? Because Babu has been talking about the, you know, the betrayal of Baba, and we've been hearing all along. And now this guy comes out yesterday and says this. I would wish you drop a comment in the comment section to let us know what your thought is. Meanwhile, let's look at the betrayal that Kalonzo Musyoka came up to show over the previous moments, okay? So Kalonzo Musyoka has come out to reveal that Raila Odinga actually betrayed him. And I don't think it's only him who feels that way. Even the rest of Kenyans feel so. Now, there is allegedly a Pentagon that is coming up, UDA and ODM, all right? We all said that every moment, what happens is the monkeys are the same, the forests change. So they rebrand and come back to us and they say there is something new. Yeah. What is your thought? Because what I believe is that these are the same monkeys. There's no difference between what was there and what is going to be there. All right? But these people are strategizing so that they still maintain their power years after years. And it will be unfortunate that maybe Kenyans will be foolish enough to believe that there is a new umbrella that is going to create any change when there is none that is coming their way anyways, okay? So let's check on this video here before we proceed. And drop your comment in the comment section, share and like the video as we proceed.
The Orange Democratic Party, ODM, the politicians later formed a coalition of political kingpins from different regions in the country to form the Pentagon that led campaigns to face the third president, the late Mwai Kibaki, at the 2007 ballot. With ODM leader Raila Odinga being their leader and their preferred presidential candidate. The then Pentagon consisted of Odinga from the Nyanza region, the current president, and the then Eldoret North MP William Ruto representing the Rift region, the late Joe Nyaga representing Mount Kenya region, Prime Cabinet Secretary Musalia Mudavadi from Western region, and the former Cabinet Secretary Najib Balala representing the Coast region.
Now guys, we realize that the upcoming Pentagon is almost the same thing, only that we don't have Charity Ngilu, Martha Karua, and Balala on board, but we still have the rest of them, and possibly, now I'm going back to the story of Kijana Msafi, having shared about Wamchomba and Babu as well as Sifuna. And what do you think about what is upcoming? Especially with the Pentagon having been mentioned here. What is your thought? 207 reloaded, right? And this is the same trick that most times Kenyans face. However, there's somebody who said that this would be a big time fail. Big time fail. Let's check out this. Big time failure. Let's look at this.
They lack an outright political leader to push their agenda. The last fight, law of war. Never fight the last fight. That was a fight that they fought on a different terrain. There were different soldiers, there was different weaponry, different artillery, different issues in forming that war. But they can cope it together. With all indications clear that ODM leader Raila Odinga will not be on the 2027 presidential ballot, the ODM top leadership seems to have taken the decision to support President William Ruto's quest for a second term in office. It will make sense for them to continue working together, to recommit to each other. I believe that the best chance for both parties is to move into the next election as a joint group. You can always say this is how we played in 2007 and that we could play that way again.
So Baraka Mluka, of course, came out to contravene, or rather to contradict the thought by Pentagon that they'll be getting a free ride in the morning and winning over in the elections. Of course, remembering the reactions from the Gen Z, a lot of them showing a lot of, distaste. And following what happened in Nepal, I saw a video yesterday that was actually viral about the Nepal situation in comparison with Kenya. Let's just look at something here. There is something related to the same, and the expectation that we don't have to really press for it when it's not working. This is something I don't understand about politicians. Even when they're being rejected, they still force and say they are still worth, that they can still work. It's never enough for them to feel like they have to reach the limit and stop it. Okay, so let's just look at the reaction after what happened in Nepal. All right, so a day before, there was an analysis on that.
Can you imagine?
And let's just listen to white media, Kenya, and see what they have to say.
Kwa sababu gani nasema hivyo? As Gen Z ama young people wametumia mtandao kama kitu yenye imekuwa wanatumia kama tools ya kujiexpress wakati wana feel government ifanye the right thing. Na hiyo imehappen pale nchi ya Nepal. Pale imetokea demonstration ambayo haijawahi tokea hii dunia yote tangu ianze. Vijana wamekasirishwa sana na government kutoa uamuzi ya kusema wana ban social media zote, Facebook, YouTube, TikTok, yote. Serikali ya Nepal ilikuwa inasema ina ban kabisa. Kitu ikakuwa interesting sana kwa Kenya kwa sababu wakati vijana wamestorm pale parliament yao na wakaichoma, nilikuwa tunapitia kwa comment za Wakenya nione wanasema aje, na Wakenya walikuwa surprised na wamefurahi sana kitu imefanyika pale Nepal, especially Gen Zs wa Kenya, na wengine wakakuwa wanasema mbona kitu kama hiyo ina happen huko badala yake happen hapa Kenya. Wengine wanasema mbona maombi yetu imejibika nchi nyingine, na nikakuwa tunajiuliza, je, ikikuwa serikali yetu ya Kenya imeamua kuban platform zetu ingekuwa aje? Kwa majina mimi naitwa Kennedy Sina, kwa watu ambao wanijui, na kutoka leo hapa ndani ya White Media tutakuwa tuna analyze siasa.
All right. So we go back to the Nepal story, of course, for those who understand what is happening in Nepal, the protests and what has happened there. We may be watching some few videos on the same. Now it happened that Kenyans were actually wondering why didn't the situation in Nepal happen in Kenya? Kenyans are very funny people, guys. Ladies and gentlemen, when you see such reaction, then you understand that the nation is in the hands of dogs, possibly, or maybe the citizens feel that their life is at, in the hands of the wrong people. So the kind of complaint we are receiving is generally a detest, Can you imagine people wishing that what happened there should be happening here? The reality of the kind of disgruntles and dislikes and lacking appreciation to what is going on is a reality when you look at what is happening and the reaction of Gen Zs about what happened in Nepal. Meanwhile, let's look at some videos of the Nepal protests before we proceed. And then we'll be getting to Gachagua deciding to drop their position in Mbeere and support somebody from UD. And what does that tell us? You've heard from Kijana Msafi saying that some of those people are just pretending. They are not so sure about whether they are in the opposition or the government. So they want to gamble around and see which ground is safe for them. At the end of the day, it's about their own self-interest. It's not about the safety of the citizens. And sometimes citizens are quickly fooled from the stories that are told here or there. But nothing out of some of the politicians is genuine. All that is meant is to form the next maybe government and benefit from it. That is actually what happens. So let's look at this from Al Jazeera before we do more analysis here.
The Nepali capital remained quiet on Wednesday following 2 days of demonstrations by young protesters, leaving dozens of people dead and hundreds injured. Armored vehicles patrolled the city to contain vandalism, looting and arson as demonstrators celebrated the resignation of Prime Minister KP Oli on Tuesday. Key government institutions, set on fire by demonstrators, continued to burn as groups of people cleaned up wreckage.
Not all of this is totally wrong, but the arson and destroying public property is wrong. We all agree that change was really needed.
The army has appealed to the public to act with restraint and cooperate to restore law and order. Soldiers have rounded up inmates who escaped after prisons were set on fire on the outskirts of Kathmandu. With a leadership vacuum in Nepal, the president has invited Gen Z youth representatives to engage in dialogue facilitated by the Nepal army.
The country is likely to take a new direction. So far, the political parties have had influence, but hopefully they've learnt a big lesson from all of this, and the country and citizens are above everything else.
While people press hopes for a new leadership, political analysts have warned of outstanding legal, political, and constitutional challenges in forming a new government. In the meantime,
now, Nepal is just one example of those countries that have messed with the constitution at one point, and the prime minister had to resign, and the dialogues, of course, being, embraced. This is the same situation that we've seen in Kenya after demonstrations and dialogues being invited. But has the solution been met in Kenya? That is one of the things that we have to ask ourselves, all right? Now, why are the Gen Zs in Kenya celebrating and wishing that their prayer should be answered? Now, what does that mean for the current government? What about the future government? Because it's neither here or there. It happens to be one after the other. When a system begins or a transformation starts, it doesn't start at the top. And I don't know what you think about this, but I would wish you drop a comment in the comment section based on what you feel or what you think about the situation. Now, meanwhile, yesterday, Rigathi Gachagua had to come up and drop their candidature in the politics of, Mbeere North, and they had to pick somebody, to support the UD member. Why do you think this move was necessary, and why did he do it? Was it wise anyway, or is it still supporting the selfish aspects of our political system? Let's be looking at that speech right here before we proceed to more.
Fantastic.
Okay, meanwhile, drop your comments in the comment section and continue sharing and subscribing to the channel. So here we are with the speech that was presented there.
We met as the National Executive Council of the DCP party at our headquarters, and in attendance to our members who are great friends of the party. When we agreed on the following: one, as we approach the by-elections scheduled for 27th November 2025, and in preparation for subsequent nominations and elections, the National Executive Council has two vital organs of the party: one, the National Elections Board; two, the National Appeals and Dispute Resolution Panel. These organs will provide the expertise required to ensure fair, transparent, and effective internal processes. As a party, we are firm in advocating for democratic governance, the protection of civil liberties, and the defense of Kenya's sovereignty against the excesses of the punitive Kenya Kwanza regime. Kenya will witness 1 senatorial, 6 National Assembly, and 17 ward by-elections. As we resolve to work closely with like-minded partners to seek to campaign, popularize and sing votes under our party ticket. As we compete, we shall respect our opposition parties in those regions where democracy is the principle of every Kenyan. This consensus and agreement among the parties in the opposition only applies to the by-elections. However,
All right. Meanwhile, let's continue subscribing to the channel and sharing our videos as we wait for the next reset. Okay, so more upcoming today. Let's continue to see what Kijana Msafi has dropped by telling us to avoid some fellas. You heard the two, and what is your thought about that? Because I've seen a lot of people, when I was discussing the gubernatorial seat of Nairobi, a lot of you are defending Babu Owino. Now this guy comes around and tells us to avoid such faces. What is your thought? What is your feeling? Because Sahit, you said that Babu Owino is very suitable for the seat, and you said he stands on his own, though earlier on tied by the farm, or rather, let's say, party.
English isn't very good.
And now the third front coming is indicated here by this guy as questionable. So we can listen more to this here before we proceed again.
Na hiyo saa hii ndio anarukaruka hapa akisema yeye ni padri, yeye mmempa kana kwamba rais. Endeni bungeni mwangalie vile ambavyo amekuwa kipindi anapigana kule mahali imeweka pesa. Hawa majamaa wamekuwa sababu vile wanajaribu kutapia hapa hiyo bad press, hiyo simkene hiyo. Ningesimama na ukweli wakati mtatikana. Wale magavana wanapangia jana usiku na watu wao kama huyu jamaa huyu gavana wa Kericho wangepiga kule kulingana haki, lakini si mahali wanalipa pesa. Si kulingana anapangia jana huko Bungeni. Wangepiga kule kulingana.
So I hope you got that, you understood what this guy is saying here, trying to say there are so many malls around the opposition and trying to mess around and divide everything. Of course, that the Kenyan politics is measured on survival, selfishness, and so many other aspects. And that is something that the voters have not come to understand. They are convinced by what they hear and what they get around them. But the reality is, ni mchezo wa town, people have to play based on what they really want, okay? And the citizens are the ones wanachezwa, and whatever happens is actually going to affect them. Now let's look at the comments to see what the people commented here. Of course, you can see somebody saying, Danson Cargo says, true, there are malls being sponsored to mess up the opposition. Another one says, Mbona Sifuna na Babu wako still ODM. Of course, they were trying to say they are forming a party, but the clarity of that has not come to place, because if indeed they focus on that, why not? Karen Njugu 6833 says, wow, what the insight goes. I've been asking myself why Sifuna hasn't commented on the impeachment of Sakaja. Then Grace Siga says, Honorable, I sensed danger from this Kenya Moja. So Kenya Moja is Kenya Kumi, all right? About Akina Babu, when they are begging for our votes. We are not tribalists, but the moment they win, they call it Swakabila, never again. Fakon says, ukweli mtupu usemwe, asante sana kutuchanua. Then Mzee is 9. Mbona sijawahi ona ukiongea kuhusu Kamau Wangede Kangede wa Inyoro TV. Agreed, hope Mbeere goes well. All right. So of course, why is Mbeere in the limelight? Of course, based on yesterday, the exit of the member was vying. That's why it is on the limelight currently. Okay. So where are the who's that? Hey, hey, Daisy, how are you? Welcome on board. And feel free to share the video. So let's proceed to another aspect of the receipt. 23 minutes down the line, we are focusing on 30 minutes minimum. And look at something different here.
My deepest condolences to the family of a lawyer, the child of Bob, who lost his life in a very sad way. And, Trevor, when death occurs, that suddenly it hits the family as a thunderbolt. And so I can imagine how devastated the family is feeling. And so we send our deepest condolences. But looking at the analysis that you have made, and the same that Standard has made here, of several people shot by hitmen on motorcycles. Kabete also was shot dead by assassins on a motorbike. We don't know about Jacob Juma. It is not reported exactly who shot him, but he was shot dead. But what I want to say is that perhaps it's time we started thinking about a regulation of motor
motorcycles, because motorcycles are being used to perpetrate very heinous crimes. So it's time, I've just been thinking whether it's time we thought of having a front, number plate on motorcycles, because it has only one registration number plate, that is at the back, on the rear. I've been wondering whether we should not now.
So guys, not just being critical but reflective about this. John New to the Senate of Muranga came up with the idea of regulating motorcycles and having the front number. I don't know how this can actually work on assassins. Assassins are people who are organized with a given intention, premeditated also, with individuals who are informed about your movements and aiming to make sure they bring you down. So I don't think the aspect of having motorbikes with identity, if during demonstrations we saw the goons coming into the city with fake numbers, does he really think that this will work? I don't think so, because looking at the death of Mbobu, for example, it has been insinuated as a political kind of death. So I don't believe that the issue of regulating the motorbikes and having front number plates would really work, because if anybody wants to do such a thing, they'll of course use their number plates that are fake, just like we've seen even during the demonstrations or other incidences in the city, people coming with cars, fake number plates, motorbikes, fake number plates, and they go about and they disappear. So the identity issue is not a problem. The fact is, people ready to deal with matters without necessarily having to assassinate? That is the only aspect. In fact, it goes back to morality. It doesn't go to legal aspects here or regulation. Because how many times have we seen people appearing with motorbikes and they have number plates, but when those number plates are checked, they really existed long ago. They are no longer even in records. So I don't think Senator Muranga has anything new here to offer or worthwhile for that aspect of assassination following the death of several, including the ones he's mentioned. Maybe you can drop your comment if you have a different view about this, but that's my perspective, in the critical perspective of what is happening in the city of Nairobi, not just there, but in other different places. Of course, we saw what happened in Isiolo and other places within the country. And talking of security, of course, you've seen security matters are not just matters to discuss lamely about, and with flimsy excuses coming from one person to the other. Of course, yesterday you had someone coming up with a theory, and the other day Warungi gave us some explanation, and adding 1 + 1 gave us 2 to give us what was exactly happening. So let's get to another receipt for a different aspect before we come to our 30 minutes, because we are on minute 28. Thank you so much for watching and liking the video. And I still encourage you to continue liking and viewing. Thank you so much. So let's get to the different receipt here to check on something else we had not talked about yesterday and having happened here.
Za ufisadi katika kaunti tofauti. A multi-million shilling tax evasion syndicate has been unearthed in Mombasa. This follows the irregular clearance of hundreds of containers of imported white rice, estimated to be worth more than 149 million shillings. The consignment was allegedly smuggled out of a container freight station within the island city and released into the market without the payment of taxes or undergoing mandatory inspections by relevant regulatory agencies. Kevin Mutai reports on the syndicate.
used to declare goods for import, export, and transit indicates that the KRA cleared the Indian long grain white rice from the CFS without subjecting it to the required screening processes. The National Electronic Single Window System, an online cargo tracking platform, and the Ministry of National Treasury and Economic Planning also shows that the grain was released into the market without approvals from relevant government agencies such as the Kenya Bureau of Standards (KEBS), the Kenya Plant Health Inspectorate Service (KEFIS), and the Anti-Counterfeit Authority (ACA). Part of the statement issued by the KRA Commissioner for Customs and Border Control on September 4th reads, and I quote, "The Kenya Revenue Authority has successfully averted an attempt to defraud the government 123 million shillings in taxes through irregular clearance of 161 containers of rice at one of the container freight stations in Mombasa. However, documents obtained by NTV indicate that the number of containers involved was actually higher and the potential tax loss might
So I can go to my class in peace. All right, so the tax evasion aspect, let's look at it because it's a common concept that is being discussed. And of course, when we look at it and how it happens, considering the example of rice in Mombasa, under invoicing the value of rice. So of course, they under invoice. If the cargoes are more, they consider to invoice few, and the rest, of course, is history. And you know what happens here. Money must be exchanging hands. So a trader actually imported 100 containers of rice from Pakistan, or rather India, possibly, because those are the sources of rice in Kenya. Now, the value of each container was estimated at 5 million Kenyan shillings, but the importer declared that it was only 2 million Kenyan shillings. The custom duty and VAT calculation gives a lower value at this, if you look at this. And so that leads to the loss of tax in the tax that is expected to be collected. Remember, looking at there was a calculation given, was it 3 days ago, indicating the loss of several billions in expected and what is collected finally. So the importer will, of course, later sell the rice at the full market price, not that they'll sell it low or anything, but then the untaxed profit is just pocketed, okay? There's also a possibility that in other situations there is misdeclaration of goods, so that the importer can declare the rice as another product of lower tax rates like wheat, grains, other grains like maize, beans, or animal feed. Of course, they are taxed lower than rice. And once they do this, then the tax out of it will be less. Sometimes there happens situations of smuggling. So smuggling through porous borders. Of course, you know the Hispania border, we have the Namanga border, Taveta border, and other borders. Yeah. So that port manipulation is another strategy with which some people use. So rice consignments are offloaded, of course, at the port of Mombasa, but never entering official records. All right. And this happens when containers are released and without proper clearance, often involving collusion with the corrupt port or KRA officials. Okay. We have cases where rice may be smuggled in through, like as I said, we have Busia border, Hispania, Taveta, Lunga, and other entry points, okay? And of course, for those ones, they'll have to organize without necessarily having them pass through customs. Then there is the actual common one, bribery and collusion, where importers will just pay bribes to have documents altered and containers released. And that is the typical example of what happened at Mombasa with the rice that is being claimed to have released and sold. Now, for instance, the importer might bribe the custom office to change the tariff codes so that the rice is also taxed at a lower rate. So Of course, you saw one thing that happened, it was under invoicing, and away from that, there was some sort of collusion with officers. All right, why does this happen? Remember, we have local rice also, like where we have Bunyala rice and Ahero, and they are sold cheaper. They cannot compete with the imported one. But when one imports, of course, they sell higher and they make more profit. Now, consumers might be flooded with the imported rice, and that's why the tariffs are actually placed. However, we may argue politically why some people decide to, evade payment of tax. Because looking at the development that tax money is doing for Kenyans, will you actually see the essence of paying tax when it's not working on the ground and giving us the services that we expect? If everybody is looting around, considering the extortion that we were revealed to during the August moment, and we've seen since then, there is silence. Every day there is a subsiding silence that is going down, and it's like that will not be a story for any other day again. Okay, so this clearly reveals why we have such scandals going on, and we can get to a different aspect here. Let's get to something else that we also have to talk about, the last of our entries on the list. Okay. Let's check on this here. So here.
Kesi 13 za ufisadi katika kaunti tofauti kati ya mwaka 2013 hadi mwaka 2025, yani mwaka huu, zilizowasilishwa.
All right, so EACC is one of the organizations in the limelight, considered independent. However, of late, we've had a lot of questions on how transparent and independent it is. And we had a question raised by, who was it? Raising whether EACC was really independent as such. I think it was, there was an individual dealing with this. Let's just check in English, Citizen TV, so that we don't get mixed up in terms of languages, right?
Now we're ready to go.
I think there was a guy from Isiolo, recently talking about this aspect. So let's get to see this on Integrity
Tough
House.
war between the EACC and the ODPP has resurfaced as the latest report to the Senate County's Public Accounts Committee, CPAC, reveals how completed graft investigations have repeatedly stalled at the prosecution stage.
The DPP withdraws charges against one individual and then later decides to withdraw charges against the whole group. So in most of these cases, that is the scenario.
According to EACC, the trend not only weakens public confidence in anti-corruption efforts, but also wastes significant resources invested in investigations, especially when cases are dropped without proper consultation. Senators have questioned the rationale behind the ODPP's decisions, raising concerns about transparency and the lack of collaboration between the two key institutions.
The DPP even has gone ahead and said in Republic versus Ali Buno Korana and 4 others that the DPP indicated that the money has been misappropriated, but DPP had recovered the money. So when DPP recovers the money that has been misappropriated, where is it taken to? Even if he has powers, honestly, and this is your case, he doesn't know how much money you have put into investigation. And he just sits there, withdraws the case.
All right, so in that situation, EACC is accused of stalling graft war. Is it? No, it's the DPP or DPP that is accused of stalling graft cases. And of course, with pending 13 cases, and looking at the case that was just pending for Captain Ngugi, I hope you understand how serious the matters of ESCC and ODPP are. Now, I wonder why the two independent organizations had to be formed, because only one of them would have worked better than two, you know. Most times when you introduce aspects of dealing with matters, then you introduce two almost duplicated, you know, positions. It becomes a mess, and that is exactly what is happening between ESCC and ODPP. Meanwhile, we can end at that, and we'll be discussing more later. Good day.